I'm handbag designer Kent Stetson, and welcome to ACC's Fashion Hour at the Fashion Incubator.
Hello and welcome. We're really happy to have you guys here for our first Fashion Hour here at the Fashion Incubator Design Lab. This is the first of two spaces that will be developed for the Fashion Incubator. This is a space where we primarily have a lot of our instructional opportunities. In this space, we teach draping and pattern making. We conduct some workshops. We're building out a sample room space that will eventually be a high-tech micro factory. And then the front part of this space is a Gerber Technology Digital Solutions mini lab. And that houses equipment and software for 2D, 3D, AutoCAD for pattern making and garment construction, as well as that large cutter there that we ask you not to touch. That is our automatic cutter for fabric, and that cuts fabric at lightning speed. So it really helps us to stay ahead of the curve in production, and it's a partnership that we're really looking forward to developing in the future. So we're really excited to have you. We're here to talk with Kent Stetson today. But before I get too far into this, I wanted to take a moment to introduce our co-host, our guest co-host today, Dr. Molly Beth Malcolm. She is our Executive Vice President for Campus Operations and Public Affairs. She oversees a large variety of different initiatives here at the college, and she has had an incredible impact on the development of this program, so we're really excited to have her. She has an incredible style sense, as you can see, and she's really been able to inject the college with a level of innovation and excitement and passion about this industry. So thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm, for joining us. We're really happy to have you. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And let me say, mark your calendars for April the 30th. From 10 to 12, that will be the grand opening ribbon cutting of the Fashion Incubator and the Fashion Workroom. So the mayor will be here, Dr. Rhodes, and a lot of other people. So yes, y'all can clap. That's going to be fun. So we just nailed that date down this week. So thank you so much. As she mentioned clothes and style, and a lot of y'all know that I love clothes and style. As I said, my husband hunts and I shop. That's how it works. But I have the great pleasure of introducing Kent Stetson to you today, and so giving you a little bit of information about how this happened to come about. In 2016, which wasn't that long ago, I was in New Orleans for a conference, and I went in a store in the French Quarter, and I saw this fabulous purse with red lipstick, and I thought, oh, I have to have that. It's a work of art. So I bought this, and it was Kent Stetson. In December, my husband and I were this year, in 2018, Bruce and I were in New York for a week of vacation, and we were at the Grand Central Station, their holiday market, and as I walked in, this great handbag display was right there for the market, and it said Kent Stetson, and it didn't first dawn on me, and I walked over and I started looking at the bags, and all of a sudden I said, aren't you Kent Stetson? Is that you? And it was, and I was so excited. So then I got my second piece of art. So I now get to be a collector of Kent Stetson. And every piece he does is just fabulous. But as we visited, I found out, oops, I didn't put that up there. But as we visited, I told him that I was at Austin Community College and that we were building a fashion incubator and that we would, what we were doing. And he said how much he enjoyed talking to students and that if he came, he would love to come and talk to our students. Then we kept talking about, well, you really should be down there and have your bags in the stores here. And then we just had a fun time. We connected. Wasn't about a month later, he called me and said, I'm coming to Austin for Fashion Week. Is it too early to come and talk to the Fashion Incubator? And I said, I don't think so. So I called Nina, connected, and this is how this started. He's going to share more of his own story than I am, but he's a wonderful artist and designer, somebody who's very passionate about what he does and cares tremendously and is giving of his time to come and share with all of you here today, and I bet we're going to see him again. So please join me in welcoming wonderful artist, designer, Kent Stetson.
It's really exciting that I get to be here and to share a little bit about my story of how I took a setback and turned that into the foundation for my company. And I don't really have an agenda for this talk other than hopefully to help you find your passion and dig deep into that as well. This is an amazing facility. I'm so excited for those of you who will get to take courses here, and I think that it used to be a fast fashion store, and now is a place where people are going to learn how to make garments from the very start to assembling tech packs and getting things rolling through perhaps larger production. I think it's just a beautiful transformation of that outdated model of commerce with new technologies and new ways of equipping entrepreneurs with the tools to make their dreams happen. Molly Beth and I met face-to-face in New York. This is a picture of my booth where I went 45 consecutive days from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. from November 13th to December 25th. Yes. This is me on Christmas Eve at the end of packing it up, but it was really a remarkable opportunity to meet 700,000 to 1 million people a day passing through Grand Central, sharing my work with them, and there is no marketing opportunity that I've experienced that has quite the reach of that. But I thought I'd start by showing a little video that illustrates my workspace and how everything is made, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the story of how that all happened. I create the artwork. Oftentimes it's a drawing or painting or photograph, and then I transfer the image to the computer where it's worked and formatted. The image is then printed, allowed to dry, and I cut the canvas. Once the canvas is dry, we then laminate it. Everything is made from our shop in Rhode Island, and we are currently selling in nearly 300 stores around the world. We're always testing and developing new materials, coming up with ways to make our designs even better than they've ever been before. My team are all my friends. We work really hard, but we're having a lot of fun doing this, and I'm so excited to share our work with new audiences all around the world. I like to think that our bags are kind of an icebreaker. They allow someone to instantly say something about themselves without even having to open their mouth.
Ken, I love your work. It's really special, and I can tell you really put your heart into it. You started as a gallery artist. I believe this is one of your pieces here. Tell us, how did you make the leap from gallery artist to handbag designer?
So my job as an undergraduate in college, and when I first graduated from college, was working retail in a shoe store. I was trying to be an artist, and in all of my spare time outside of my job, I was creating hybrid digital paintings, and I had the opportunity to stage a solo exhibition at a gallery in Providence where I worked, and I spent about a year putting this show together, and it was very well received. However, none of the pieces sold. And I lived in a studio apartment at the time, which had become taken over with all of my unsold artwork, and I was going in every day to the shoe store where I worked, and we carried a line of handbags there called the Icon that had more famous artwork on them, but I connected a couple of dots there. And so I started cutting up some of the paintings and sewing them into bags. And then the owners of the store let me have a show there. So it was a combination of my paintings that hadn't sold in a last-ditch hustle to try and sell them, along with some of the new pieces that I had cut and assembled into handbags. And the handbags sold immediately. And so I took the hint. It turned out that a handbag was a really great way to package my art, and my experience working in retail really gave me the tools to understand that end user transaction, which really has been the foundation of this company, which started 15 years ago and is still very much focused on the end user transaction of meeting people, whether it's in Grand Central, whether it's here at Austin Fashion Week. And so that's really how it all started, was sort of a bummer and a quick pivot and learning how to connect all the dots.
So I want to, just one more thing, in looking at your past, you were an artist, but I know when I read your bio that you had grown up on a farm. And are you going to talk about that later? No, we can talk about it now. Oh, so this isn't the question I was supposed to ask, but I think this was very interesting. So you want to talk about that and your...
Absolutely. So I was raised on a horse farm, and here's a picture in the entry of the house where I was raised. My parents built the house. My dad's a blacksmith, and my mom made and maintained the bridles for her horses. And so it turned out that I had the tools to make handbags. I just had to connect the dots with my catastrophic painting career. And so you can see here I am in the shop building a strap for a bag. It's really the same process. Gucci, Hermes, Coach, all began as tack companies, which is, so if you look at a pair of Gucci loafers, they have the horse buckle on them. Coach has the image of the horses in Coach on their insignia. Hermes still makes saddles. So there's a centuries-old tradition of the craft of making tack and bridles with constructing shoes and handbags. And so I was really able to, pardon the pun, harness that.
That's great. So now what inspires you today and your recent collections?
Everything is fair game. I think as a designer, if you can make something that people have a very strong connection to on a core sentimental connection, you're golden. And when I do what I do best, it is when someone looks at something and feels like it was just made for them, or as a gift for someone that they care dearly about. If someone can have a real connection with a piece that I've made, that is how I hope to continue to move forward as a designer. I'm really at the service of my clients, ultimately.
You know, one of the things I really appreciated in some of our previous conversations was how you related your customer experience to how you're developing your product, and how you pivot with what they're looking for and how that experience is. Can you tell us more about how what you learned in retail affects your ability to be an effective designer now?
So being in Providence, Rhode Island, I'm very close to the Rhode Island School of Design. I'm also close to New York, Parsons, FIT, top tier fashion and apparel design schools. And I sense sometimes that designers look down on retail as being somehow beneath them. Like maybe a chef looking down on serving. However, it's such a collaboration, and I think that the point of sale and how you're connecting with your audience and perhaps people who are going to be your patrons is essential. And so working in a shoe store, getting comfortable talking to people, not being shy about encouraging them to buy something and then not being afraid to discourage them in some cases from buying something like if a pair of shoes clearly didn't fit, saying, let's try this other thing out as well. Just that has informed me, and I think given my business a longevity that a lot of my peers didn't experience, because I believe so strongly in connecting with people and hearing what they like about things that I've made and what they don't like. It really is like people will give you the keys that you need to make your business succeed if you are earnest enough and willing to listen and occasionally willing to disregard things they say. So I encourage anyone who is interested in fashion to have some experience working on a retail sales floor. You will be informed so valuably as you navigate how you will build your own career in fashion.
Looking back and knowing what you know today, what would you do differently in your career?
I think that we all make choices, and I think just understanding what your choices are and why you're making particular choices. So I decided fairly early on that my business was going to be financed entirely through my sales. And that was a key pivotal decision that has informed the path and really the slow growth model of my business. Had I chosen differently when someone said, we'd like to invest in your company, I do wonder sometimes, would I have a lifestyle brand that had scaled very fast and given me, at this point in my life, assurance that I would retire with all of my needs being taken care of. And sometimes I lament that I didn't make that choice. At the same time, when a mistake is made, given my business model, I don't have anyone to blame but myself, and that's a very powerful thing, to know that you are accountable and in control and not totally reliant on the decisions that other people are making. So if something feels right to me, I will do it, and if something doesn't feel right, I won't do it. And I have sold to some bigger stores, Nordstrom, Fred Siegel, Nasty Gal, and I discovered that I'm not really in the business of extending lines of credit. And so that was a big decision for me. In 2008, a lot of independent designers and smaller brands went out of business because companies defaulted on their payments, and the smaller brands that required factoring to pay to produce their orders had to file for bankruptcy because they couldn't pay their financiers in return. So I've traded the opportunity to grow fast and in a really glamorous pace with the opportunity to continue doing something for as long as I want to.
That's fantastic. Can you briefly explain the factoring term that you used, just so that we're all on the same page about what that means?
So say Macy's comes up to you and says, we'd like to order and put you in 300 doors. Generally, opening orders aren't that big, but let's say they come up to you and say, we're going to place a $30 million order with your company. That sounds great. And then they give you a 100-page contract, and you will hire an attorney to review that and determine if there are terms that can be whittled down. And then you need the money to make all of that stuff, because these companies will say net 45 or net 60 terms. So the day they receive their orders, they'll wait 45 to 60 days before they actually send you a payment for it. And there may be chargebacks, like if you didn't affix the SKU tags in exactly the right place or in the right way, they'll dock. Or if you shipped on a Friday and they don't want people shipping out orders on a Friday because they lose 2 days to the weekend, they'll dock for that. So factoring is the way that a company that doesn't have their own capital reserve will, it's a kind of a loan, I guess, and there are penalties. If you do not make your payment on those loans when it is agreed to in the contract, the penalties are astronomical. And it's you need to have those, a backup plan. If you don't receive your payment in time, how else are you going to get a second loan to pay that first loan?
Wow. You know, this process is really layered, you know, understanding all the different components of business and how that affects, you know, you start with the beautiful inspiration and then the execution of that and how much effort it takes to get it to the customer. But it sounds like you really were firm about taking a stake to avoid this situation with the factoring, correct?
So I'll start with this caveat. I think I'm a good salesperson. I can't say necessarily that I'm a good business person. But a lot of artists have the conundrum of being a great artist but not having what they call the business sense. And actually, I'm good at selling. If you put me in front of a customer, I think that we can have a conversation and they can leave trained as an ambassador of my work. Even if they don't make a purchase for something, they're ready to go out and tell the story of the donut bag or whatever else that I have caught their interest with. And so I have balanced the need to generate my capital to continue my business model. I wouldn't say that I have shored up all of the tools to scale this to $10 million in sales instead of around $1 million a year in sales right now. So I think it will continue to be a slow evolutionary model.
Well, $1 million isn't anything to sneeze at. I think you're doing quite well. And you know, you've actually been seen on a number of celebrities as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I collect Real Housewives. I have a menagerie of Real Housewives, and if you don't know who they are, you're probably better off for it. But they have really served me very well. And one of the things that I learned is, for about a year, I had a PR firm in New York that was doing the PR work for me because I was sort of afraid of that. And I thought if I had a firm doing it, that they would take care of it. And the takeaway for me was that PR and marketing, really it's like therapy. You get out of it what you're willing to put into it. And if you aren't willing to put in the work yourself, you're going to end up wasting a lot of money. And so I decided to hire someone on my team who sits at her computer all day. We're talking back and forth while I'm sewing. She is reaching out to stylists, and we're making those connections ourselves. And we've actually had far greater results through that. And one of the ways that social media has been so helpful is that I don't need to have the Rolodex of contacts the way that the agencies in New York would have when print was really the primary method of marketing, and celebrities you would reach through their agents. Now you can just go onto Instagram and see who are the stylists that are dressing people. And we've been incredibly successful with that. Elizabeth, who works on my team, will typically send 200 to 250 emails a day to stylists, and sometimes 10 messages later we'll get a reply that says, stop emailing me. Or they'll say, I have a project.
Excellent. So persistence pays off.
Yes.
Did you have a video for us to see some of your clients or real regarding that?
Well, I can show you some stills of celebrities that I've worked with, and if you go on our YouTube channel, you'll see that we have lots of videos of TV shows. And one of the things that's really exciting for smaller designers like myself right now in this era of Netflix and Hulu and Snapchat TV and Facebook TV and Prime is that there are so many programs that have budgets to film right now. We're getting so many calls for placements for stylists. So you will only continue to see, if you're following our social media, our placements in television and film will be exploding this year. But some of the celebrities that I've had a chance to work with, well, this summer I met Martha Stewart, and I made a bag for her with her dogs on it. And this is Michelle Kwan and Johnny Weir, and Martina Navratilova. And this is the Sharna Burgess who just won Dancing with the Stars. Here's Bobby Flay holding my burger bag. Phaedra Parks, who's been incredibly generous, has never asked for a penny, and has carried bags in several episodes when she was on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Salt and Peppa. This is one of my promo campaigns. So yeah, celebrity aspect is really fun and has given us a great deal of cachet, and it's accessible for any of you who are designing your own pieces. They're not that far from reach. If you're willing to be a little bit persistent, understand that no may be the answer, but 5 or 10 emails in. I would discourage sending direct messages on Instagram, and I would also discourage you from trying to connect directly with agents and publicists, but stylists are definitely your key, and the Costume Designers Guild.
That's a good one. That's great. Thank you. This has been such an incredible conversation. Let's give Ken a hand. Well, we wanted to take a minute and just wrap up with some question and answer from our audience. Thank you so much for joining us. If anyone has a question for Kent, we can ask away.
Yes, the Garden Room is selling the line now, and they've got quite a nice selection. I'll also be in the store tomorrow from 10 to 4 with a trunk show, an array of pieces. You're also welcome to, after we're done, to look at the pieces that I brought here, and I have cards on the table there, so you can keep in communication if you have any questions that you think up after. I'm accessible. I can be reached beyond this conversation as well. So the Garden Room, the address is?
It's 1601 West 38th Street. I
Thanks.
know them very well because they also carry my brand.
And I thought,
It's 38th and Kirby in Central Austin. We have another question?
Did you feel intimidated when you became not just a designer, but also a business owner and a business head? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I think I overcome my intimidation every single day. And I think that a lot of creative people, the creative practice is for many of us quite solitary. And so balancing that with the need to also reach out and ask people for things, it's a very difficult thing. And so sometimes you just have to ignore being intimidated and just do it anyway. If you're not going to, you're going to have to hire and pay someone else to do it. And so I face intimidation on almost a daily basis. Yeah.
Hi. You talked about life experience and work experience leading up to kind of where you are now, but since we're an educational institution, can you talk about a value of some educational scaffolding that you would recommend or that was helpful to you?
Yeah. So when I worked in retail, I found Harry Friedman to be very helpful in understanding ways of connecting with people on a retail sales floor. And so he has a series of books, and they've probably been rewritten as consumers shift to other methods of buying, just beyond in a brick and mortar store. But I found his tools to be very helpful. Also, I would caution you, if you're scrolling through on social media and you see something like an online fashion accelerator program, I would encourage you to come here instead, where you will actually have real tools and a certain amount of accountability and on behalf of the people who are taking the funding that you're offering for your education. So most importantly, I would say be wary of people trying to take your money and not delivering you a product that you can actually translate into a success for your own future.
Do you follow a production schedule like the large fashion houses, like a spring line and a cruise line and so on?
Sure, that's a great question. So my company, we have our direct-to-consumer and online, but we also sell in a few hundred stores. And the way that I initially met with stores was just walking into stores. And then I realized that if I started doing trade shows, I would capture buyers when they were more receptive to looking at new lines. It can be not a good thing to walk into a store and say, here's my collection, would you like to buy it? Because the sales floor is sacred, and if you go in there trying to sell to them, you can really leave a bad taste. So as a result, I do trade shows. I'm in New York at the Javits Center several times a year. I won't be at Coterie, which starts tomorrow, but I do the New York Gift Show. I've also done Magic in Las Vegas many times. And so our buyers are groomed and conditioned to expect those line sheets will come in 3 times a year, and that we will have new items for them at least 3 times a year. I try to email more often than that and say, here's some new pieces. So we are expected to constantly be adding new prints. Now we have our signature shape, and it's not incredibly complicated. Once you've seen our clutch style bag, you sort of know it, but we're always adding new prints to that. Yeah, so 2 to 3 times a year, new line sheets go out.
Hi, I'm wondering how Austin is perceived outside of Austin in terms of the fashion scene.
I think everyone thinks that Austin is super cool, everywhere. So last night, I've been in Austin for 24 hours now, but through South by Southwest and all of the cultural and music activities that are happening here, I think everyone thinks that Austin definitely has a kind of hipster spin, which may or may not be accurate, but the perception of Austin is that it's very, very cool. And all of you who are interested in designing should be designing here in Austin, because people are going to want that. Austin cool is a thing that I think consumers really will respond to in a way that people sometimes respond to New York for a certain type of cosmopolitan. Definitely put Made in Austin with pride if that is what you're going to do. People will like that.
I was wondering, how long did it take for you to take the results from your first art show and the feelings you had, and then turn them into your bags? Like, how long was that process? Did you get down on yourself for a while, or was it like an immediate, I need to do better, or how did you feel?
I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question exactly how you asked it, but for 8 years following that experiment of cutting up a handbag, a painting, and sewing it into a handbag, I worked a full-time job. I had a steady source of income so that I could make the mistakes that I needed to as a largely self-taught artisan, and so I had a steady stream of income before I finally pulled the plug about 7 years ago on having a reliable source of steady income. And so I would encourage you all to make sure that you do have steady source of income as you, it takes years to build a brand from the startup, unless you may start with a huge amount of seed capital, but the crash and burn rate on those types of entities is pretty large. So I would expect that for your own, if you were a startup, that you would anticipate several years before you would actually see an accrued balance in your bank account.
I'm wondering how you determine your price point, what your product will sell for. How does an artist figure out how far they can go before it's not viable?
I'm going to tell a story. So the very, very first bag that I made, I showed to, I had cut up a painting and sewed it into a bag, and I showed it to someone that I admired very much. She had a fabulous sense of style. She was an extremely successful painter who painted 80 covers for New Yorker magazine, big deal. And she looked at the bag and said, "I like it. How much?" Which was terrifying. That's such a scary question for someone to ask. And I said $115, and she said, "Okay, I'll take it." I think you have to be realistic when you're starting out. I have my price point is generally around $200 for the clutch pieces. They all have a crossbody chain. I still sign each piece as I sew them up. We found that is a kind of a sweet spot in the market. Like if you're going to the mall to buy a bag, that's sort of what people kind of expect they're going to pay for a designer label piece. And so apparel is tricky because you have to think of fast fashion and how those pieces are priced, and then figure out how you can make sure people understand your production models that require your pricing be higher than that. You should look at your costs, how much your raw materials cost, and how much your labor costs, and figure out how you can cut that number down a little bit. I don't always factor in my personal labor into my cost structure. Someday, I do believe that I will do that consistently. But if you can make the thing yourself, you are better set up to build your own safety net, so that you're not required on forking over money to continue to make your product. So 10 years ago, I started really wholesaling pieces, and I had to triple my prices. And that was a scary leap because I thought this may not work out. I went from selling my pieces at $70 to having to sell them for $200, and nothing changed. My business grew.
So you're here for Austin Fashion Week. I participated in Austin Fashion Week 3 years in a row. And I know they have different pop-up shops, and then you have the finale with the runway. What part are you playing this week in Austin Fashion Show?
I'm part of the pop-up stores. So last night I was selling bags, and one of my suitcases did not arrive, so I didn't have everything that I had expected. But you know what? You roll with it. And I think people in Austin are pretty laid back, and so I was a little panicked at the airport, but everyone around me was so calm, and it was fine. I sold some bags, and I'll continue doing so. It's also a great marketing value because I have a distribution point here. More than anything, what I'm doing is marketing my work and making sure people have seen it and know what it looks like and know the guy.
What do you think is the best way to market your work if you're not the most bold person or you're not the most social media savvy?
Sell to your friends who are, and call them out if they're not posting on their social media saying where they found the thing. One of the things that I've benefited from is having work that is pretty Instagrammable, and it has a quality that compels people to share it on their social media, and I'll see if I can find a picture here. You should expect your customers, your friends, your family to help you out a little bit, and ask the people that you're most comfortable with first. You're going to have to table that. If you're a little shy and intimidated, you're going to have to get over it somehow, though. And so hang out with people who pump you up and help you dig in and find your real passion. And I know that your instructors, the people that are here who are instructing, are offering that, and will help with that too.
I guess I'm wondering, what was the time frame in doing the bags until you felt comfortable to move forward with other opportunities as far as putting them in stores? Did you feel like your work was good enough to be in stores the first time somebody approached you, or did you feel like you wanted to work on it a little bit more before you took that step?
Ready or not, go for it. And if one store doesn't work out, that's a very valuable lesson that you'll take away. And if you are confident enough to dig in and learn from those lessons, your line will be improved for those people who don't know yet that they want your products in their store.
So I'm going to ask one last question. As you look out and there are people in this room who are looking at going into the fashion field, and if they don't remember anything else that you said, what is the one piece of advice that's the most important piece of advice that they could remember?
Yes, you can.
That is a great piece of advice. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Nina, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming. Y'all need to realize this is the inaugural event, the first designer we've had here. He is somebody that is known nationally and internationally. And he came because he asked and said, I want to share my experience with your students. And you heard him say, look at an incubator like this, where you have an accredited program that'll help you as you go out into the world. And I want to say thank you so much for calling. I'm glad we had the opportunity to meet, and I think this friendship will go on, and we hope you're going to come back to Austin Community College many, many times. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that wraps up our first fashion hour. Thank you to our guest co-host, Dr. Malcolm. Thank you, and thank you to Ken Stetson for making time out of your very busy schedule. I know that you've got lots of travel coming up, promoting your bags, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, and so it's really a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much again. So just a little bit of internal information here. So this is our very first fashion hour. Again, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director for the Fashion Incubator here. And what we're trying to do is to keep our doors open to be able to share what we do here in the fashion industry. We want to expose our students, our staff, our local industry to a variety of different opportunities to meet designers, to learn about fashion business, to find out about other careers that are in the fashion industry, how we overlap with different disciplines in computer science, technology, marketing, business development. We really do touch a lot of different areas, and so this is an opportunity for us to be able to, biosciences, biotechnology, this is a really important thing that we're doing here, and we really want to continue to educate our local constituents and stakeholders about what we're doing here at the Fashion Incubator. This will be once a month, so please look out for our next Eventbrite. We encourage you to share this through your social networks. You can follow us on Facebook at the ACC Fashion Incubator or on Instagram at ACC Fashion Incubator. Please feel free to share any of our content. You can tag us in yours, so if you take pictures here, you take pictures with Kent, please feel free to tag us. Our hashtag is ACC Fashion Incubator and hashtag ACC Fashion. So we're really happy you're here. Thank you so much for coming. And that wraps up our first fashion hour. Thanks.